Hi gang, on The Joy of Football this week,
Find out who we have to talk about.
Manchester United and their struggles. I love it. A letter from the Gantry is Martin Tyler's landmarks.
The season is gathering pace, and whether you watch your football from a gantry, in a ground, or on a screen, the joy we get from the game is irrefutable. And we have three of the best, which is fun for us to do. I hope fun for you to take on board.
Brighton and Hove Albion's Carlos Baleba.
Angel Correa
Cole Palmer after his 4 goals in the first half.
and Liam Delap, now of Ipswich.
Comparisons, 3 sets of players, starting with Jude Bellingham and Zinedine Zidane.
I was there for the goal at Hampden Park.
In the Champions League final.
Champions League final, yeah. And I'll sit back while Neil is the voice of passion.
I want safe desegregation. It's considered to be absolutely impossible. Stoppage time is the end where we look around the grounds elsewhere. Let's go. The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks for a shot in! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football. Hello. For many people, I'm sure many of you, The Joy of Football, our podcast with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett. For many people, The Joy of Football, when watching it on television, especially towards the end of the season, is when you commentators have to talk over the pictures of a crucial game and the losing supporters are in tears. They're tearing their hair out if they've got any. They're cuddling up with each other in awful agony, and then they switch to the other supporters and they're in ecstasy. I love all that. The playoffs, I love it all. Relegation, champions, I love it all. And we're going to start this week with our segment we need to talk about Manchester United and their struggles. I love it.
What I would say, Neil, what you've described is happening after every game now. It's not just at the end of the season. Winning is so important. Losing is such a desperate feeling. And there's no, I think, medium-term thoughts. It's all short-term. And for Manchester United, yes, so far it's been another disappointing beginning to a season where they're hoping to build on a wonderful performance to win the FA Cup. A really wonderful performance to beat Manchester City back in May. And I guess that raised the hopes. It kept Erik ten Hag in a job for sure. And now we're looking at a situation where nothing really seems to have changed too much. And the fact that they got such a terrible start against Tottenham, I think, is the worst thing when you're short of confidence. And we've got to remember now, there are some new players, of course, this season, but most of them are rather labelled as being players in this era of failure, relative failure, although they've won the 2 cups under Erik ten Hag. So it is difficult. Confidence, even for the greatest players, is sometimes a commodity that can go missing. And there's just something weak about them at the moment. And I think that comes down to not being able to put together the sort of runs that the fans expect. And, you know, even a trophy a year for the last 2 years, they're not seen as exactly what Manchester United are made to do. But I well remember, as you do, the 26-year gap between winning being champions of England from 67 to 93, the first Premier League year. And of course, that really got him off and running under Alex Ferguson. He had 3.5 years before he won his first trophy. Erik ten Hag's won 2 and has only just had over 2 years. So what are we doing? We're comparing teams, or are we comparing the society that these managers manage in?
I go back to this extraordinary statistic that United, in their whole history, have only won the league twice without either Sir Matt Busby or Sir Alex Ferguson as their manager. And that was in the 1920s, both times. But
so you're saying look in Scotland for the next one then, are you?
Well, maybe. but I mean I look at them now. I said in our previews at the beginning of the season that I couldn't see them coming in the top 4 because I couldn't see them scoring enough goals. They signed Holland last season on the back of really just a few months good football. And now they've signed Xerxes, who Bayern Munich didn't want to keep. He's... I quite like Xerxes, but he's not a champion quality player, I don't think. And they're signing all these other players for huge amounts of money. I see, was it Nicky Butt or Paul Scholes went off on one this week saying that De Ligt is just not good enough and is not better than Harry Maguire. So why do you sign De Ligt?
One thing I would say, and I think we have to emphasise this point, that whatever they are now, with Erik ten Hag, they are just a few weeks into Dan Ashworth and Jason Wilcox, who are charged with setting the agenda, the style of play, and getting their feet under the table to start with. And I think they deserve to be given the opportunity. We've banged on in this podcast about the directors of football, sporting directors, call them what you will, the ones above the bosses of the manager or the head coach, that they have to be accountable. But I don't think we can call them accountable after just a few weeks.
No, I would simply ask this question. Ten Hag's greatest achievement at club level was definitely taking Ajax to the semi-finals of the Champions League. It was such a glorious run with some outstanding away performances, counter-attacking performances. But United at their best really were what you now call a counter-attacking team, in that they got the ball and they went for it. So you kind of imagine that would be in their DNA, getting Ten Hag to manage them. But I look back at those Ajax performances and they couldn't defend to save their lives. And of course they were 3 up against Tottenham. I think it was it 1-0 up from the away leg, and then 2-0 up in the first half at home, or was it 2-0 up and 1-0
Then Lucas Moura descended upon them
and scored a hat-trick in the second half to take the aggregate score to 3-3, and in the days of away goals counting double, they went through. Now, I saw I can't remember, it was if it was that season or the following season, Chelsea played Ajax in the group stage, won 1-0 in Amsterdam. Again, Ajax not good on the front foot at home. And they came to Stamford Bridge, and I think they were 4-1 up, and the game finished 4-4. I remember Reece James scoring. Outstanding that night for Ajax was Hakim Ziyech, who Chelsea subsequently bought.
Ziyech and Dusan Tadic were the key players.
Well, Tadic played centre forward, whereas at Southampton he'd been a number 10, and that was one of the great moves by Ten Hag, I assume, moving him to centre forward. But they couldn't defend, and when Chelsea put the pressure on, the goals went in. They couldn't defend. Manchester United's goalkeeper, Onana, was their goalkeeper, Ajax's, and their centre backs, De Ligt and Martinez, were their centre backs. He has taken the ones who can't defend to Manchester United to not defend.
Well, it does look that way. I must say, in the criticism of Erik ten Hag, the one thing that you can level at him is the signings. And I'm assuming that they are his signings. We never quite know. I always think that we should be told in the media who has actually put their mark on the signing, and then you can get all the glory if the player does well, and you're accountable if the player doesn't do well. I can't hide behind a desk and say, well, But he does seem in the firing line, Eric, for that, for the way that the players haven't lived up to what he thought they would bring. But as I say, it's just these things. It's the chemistry of football. Winning can become a habit, although it's the most difficult thing on the planet. But losing, even more so, or not winning, or not performing, or being weak and conceding goals. The only thing as a total neutral, I just get fed up with people who support these big clubs and feel entitled to have trophies year after year after year without really looking at the detail that goes into winning it. And when Alex Ferguson won those trophies, he was beating off not quite as many opponents with the resources as Manchester United face now. I mean, if Manchester United win the league, we'll be yelling at Liverpool or yelling at Arsenal or yelling at Spurs or yelling at Manchester City. I'm here talking to you and talking to this camera because I want to put some perspective on that and not go, well, I mean, for Arteta to finish second twice, given the circumstances, is a remarkable achievement. But if he doesn't win the league this year, all the critics who think it's all about winning trophies, they'll be on him, and that maybe he won't last as long. Probably, Manchester United need an Arteta. They need somebody coming in at the start of their managerial career who can build and go with Wilcoxon now and Dan Ashworth and get that kind of togetherness and take a few hits along the way, but be strong in their belief that they've got the right person to do that. Now, finding the right person is, of course, the million-dollar question.
Well, you see...
And I don't want to disrespect Erik ten Hag. He's still in the job. He came out fighting after the Tottenham result, which I admired him for. But they've now got Porto away and Villa away, I think, before the international break. The international break is the dangerous time for managers.
And it wasn't the sending off Bruno Fernandes.
No, I don't think it was. No, actually, we've agreed on something.
Yeah. Right, I just want to give you this. This is the number of years before they won the league that now have gone since they last won the league. So I'm starting in 1981-82. This was United's seasons. Third and won the FA Cup. Fourth and won the FA Cup. Fourth, 11th. Second, 11th. 13th and won the FA Cup. Sixth and won the European Cup Winners' Cup. Second and won the League Cup. So this winning of cups set them up to then go on this incredible run.
Yeah,
and
when you start in 81, 82, they hadn't won the league since 67.
No, and they've been relegated in that time.
Had.
But the point is there was an 11th and a 13th in there. Now, if we go from since Fergie left and David Moyes became manager, 2013-14, 7th, 4th, 5th, 6th and won 7th, 4th, 5th and won the FA Cup, but sacked the manager. 6th and won the FA Cup and the UEFA Cup. 2nd and then later sacked the manager. 6th, 3rd, 2nd and later sacked the manager. 6th, 3rd and won the League Cup. 8th and won the FA Cup. This is their DNA when they're not winning league trophies serially.
Well, all I would say is the analogy is Old Trafford itself. Get the stadium proper again, and maybe the team will come proper again. But it is football. Liverpool went 30 years without being champions of England, having been, when I was starting my commentary career, if Liverpool lost a game, particularly if you did a game at Anfield and Liverpool lost, you were thinking, my goodness, this never happens. You put it into historical context. So it's cyclical, and I do think that I know the measure of disappointment because what happened at the weekend and one or two other performances, it's not enough for any club, let alone Manchester United. But the sense of expectation has got to be tempered. Sense of entitlement has got to go out the window.
Yeah.
That is a load of word that you use and I'm not going to use. But it is a terrible part of football.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to know that off broadcasting, Martin Tyler has been known to swear a little bit, just a little bit.
Only
but
I'm not dugout.
I'm not having it that this goody, he's a goody two shoes. He can be quite assertive. Right. I'm a little bit unhappy with one or two United players. As a non-United, obviously, I mean, I'm happy with them because I'm not a United fan, but I just think they've got to improve. I had my say about Mainu in the summer. I think he's a great prospect, but I don't think he's quite there yet. And there's too much on his shoulders. And it just looks so unbalanced. But I want to just finish this with, if you were taking over Manchester United today, looking at that squad, what would give you hope? Who would you build around?
Well, I'd do something that nobody does because it's regarded as old-fashioned. I decide on what my best team is, and I play them every week possible, every game possible, and give them a chance to develop. And I give them the confidence and belief and say, you're my players. The problem is when you've got a squad of international players and the ones that aren't in are more trouble than you can imagine because they expect to play. But in the end, the manager's got to be stronger than the players to get the best out of the players, and then the players will respect the manager. And I don't know, that I'm not describing the scene at Manchester United at the moment, but you asked me the question, and that's what I do. And I just look at it and say, right, yeah, you're my best right back, you're my best left back, or whichever way we're going to play. You're going to play, unless you get injured. We're going to go with this, and as long as Jason and Dan say so, because they're the ones that have the ultimate responsibility. I consult with them and say, this is what I'm going to do. And if they say, well, it's wrong, then you go and find another job. But it's not a job. I'm never going to be given this situation, but it's quite nice to think about it for 30 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I'd really struggle. I mean, you've got to build it around Bruno Fernandes because he has got the quality, but I'm just not sure that he's got the all-round game, and I think that's the first issue.
I love his sense of responsibility. As I understand it, Neil, he was waiting to be interviewed after the sending off. He virtually told the press officer who controls these things, I want to go out. And he waited while other people were being interviewed so he could have his say. And I think that shows a lot of character. Obviously, he was trying to explain his side of the sending off, and I don't blame him for doing that. But a lot of times I've been at games where there've been red cards dished out, and to get anywhere near the player, even for a quiet word in his ear, it's very difficult. So I think well done, Bruno. He has got leadership qualities. He is a bit over emotional at times, but he's a heck of a player.
But I look elsewhere, and that everyone seems too accident prone. Has anyone improved under your tenure? That's the question. And I'm not sure. I'm not convinced.
I think Dalot has. There's one.
Yeah. But he hasn't had a good start to the season, Dalot. I think he had a good Euros, and he had a very good season last season, and I do think he's a good player, and he speaks great English and is a good post-match interview.
That counts a lot for you.
It does, yes.
I'm more, is he very recognisable when he gets in the box? And he is, and he does get a goal or two. So.
I'm not going to ask you if Ten Hag will be the manager by the end of the season, because that's unfair, because you don't deal in those kind of predictions. But I'll say if things don't improve, he won't be the manager next month. I mean, I do think that. But the whole point with Sir Alex Ferguson, when he was just Alex Ferguson, is that within the club, they could see he was sorting out the dross, he was sorting out the badly organised system throughout the club from the youth team developing upwards. They could see what he was doing, and that's one of the reasons they stuck with him.
But no one man can do that now, so he's never going to be replaced. No. So it's pie in the sky to think that we need the club to another Alex Ferguson.
I mean, are the players improving? Yeah. Big question. Okay, Manchester United, that's the struggles over. Our producers are sitting here, Manchester United, two of them, in absolute agony, listening to that.
I think glum with a capital G.
Yeah. Yes. The only thing I'd say to you is, you're crap. Right.
Well, they're not. They're very good. We appear courtesy of them.
Yes.
We should never forget that. No. If we were left to our own devices, actually, I'm sure perhaps some of our viewers, listeners, would probably be quite happy because there would be no show then. But we're still trying to entertain you and give us all the space that we believe we deserve.
So, from the disaster that is Manchester United to the joy that is Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Thanks, Neil. 6 rounds of the Premier League gone already. We're into October. The season is gathering pace. And whether you watch your football from a gantry, in a ground, or on a screen, the joy we get from the game is irrefutable. The landmarks keep on coming. At Stamford Bridge, Cole Palmer's first half 4 goals, blitzing Brighton and making history. The first such achievement in the Premier League before half-time. A mirror image of the 4-goal second half salvo I witnessed from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Nottingham Forest. 4 in 10 minutes, some 25 years ago, on as a Manchester United substitute at the City Ground. Before Ice Cold Cole got into his stride, another record had been set in West London, reinforcing the message, do not turn up late for a Brentford game. The Bees buzzed right from the off, opening the scoring inside the first minute for a third match in a row. It was Johan Wissa at Manchester City, Brian Mbeumo at Spurs, and then again at home to West Ham. Sadly for Thomas Frank and his quick out-of-the-blocks players, the 3 matches in the end produced only 1 point. For courage and character, hats off, sombreros off, to Mexico and Fulham's Raul Jimenez. Almost 4 years ago, Raul was fighting for his life, let alone his career, after a sickening head injury playing for Wolves at Arsenal. Coming back from that fractured skull was surely out of the question, but you're dealing here with an extraordinary man. At that point, his career record in England stood at 34 Premier League goals, and that was the way it was surely going to stay. Now, incredibly, he's reached 50, the last 10 coming in just 30 appearances since his switch to Fulham. And what would mean the most to this truly remarkable person is that the 50th won the points at Nottingham Forest. Incidentally, I was lucky enough to be at the Cottage to see number 49, that superb swivel and shot against Newcastle the previous weekend. Recognising history when it's being made is part of a commentator's skill set, but I also enjoy the subtext of a fixture, like connections between clubs when they meet. I'm recently back from Bournemouth against Southampton, who named 3 ex-Cherries on their team sheet. Goalkeeper Aaron Ramsdale was on the Bournemouth books for 3.5 years, though he only played 1 full season in their Premier League team. It seemed from the Gantry that his return to the Vitality Stadium was greeted with respect. Not so Ryan Fraser. 7 years solid service counted for nothing because of the way he left the club 4 years ago, refusing to sign on for that extra month needed for those whose contract had ended on June the 30th when the COVID season spilled into July. It was, of course, Ryan's right to do that. He had a move to Newcastle lined up, but Bournemouth were relegated by the end of that extra month. The hostility he received meant that I did not need to say his name to identify him when he got the ball. The booze did that for me. He was substituted at half-time. When Adam Lallana came on with 20 minutes to go, I expected a bit of a fanfare. He grew up in Bournemouth and was for a short time in the Cherries Schoolboy Centre before moving eastwards along the coast to learn his trade in his first spell with the Saints. He actually played 3 first-team games for Bournemouth during a month on loan, but that was 17 years ago. The lack of any reception probably came because many of the home fans were too young to remember. The identification that all commentators want to nail down is naming the goal scorer. The second conceded by Southampton was a tricky one. The celebration is often the clue, but on this occasion the most extrovert reaction came from Antoine Semenyo, who'd set up the goal and may well have thought that he got an assist. His cutback was drilled goalwards by Lewis Cook, and the ball ended up in the net. But the telling moment was a touch of his teammate Dango Ouattara, who was in Aaron Ramsdale's eye line, but onside. So Cook got the assist. Ouattara was the scorer. In such an intimate stadium, that slight touch was spottable from what is a very commentator-friendly Gantry. But even after all my years, I can tell you that with great relief.
Yes. Couple of things from that. That is why, that last point, the assists are so stupid, the way Opta does them. And Semenyo, of course, should have got an assist as well as Lewis Cook. You can have 2 assists on the goal.
But Lewis Cook then set up Semenyo for the 3rd goal.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying.
There was a bit of payback.
It doesn't actually tell... The Opta assists don't tell you any story at all, really. Whereas if it was more subjective, they would. Brian Mbeumo, we're doing 3 of the best yet next, and he's not in our list to talk about. But let's just talk about him very quickly, because after his start to the season has been so impressive, and I don't like Brian Mbeumo. I don't like him at all, because he has destroyed my Chelsea at Stamford Bridge year after year. They've won. This is their 4th season in the Premier League, and in the previous 3, they've won all their games at Stamford Bridge, Brentford. So they're probably the only team to have a 100% record at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League, and he's been outstanding in every game. And the more I watch him, I looked him up after he got this goal. I was absolutely shocked he's only 25. I mean, nothing personal, Brian, but you look older. And he's only 25. And I look at him and I think, heck, he's a top 4 player for me.
Well, a good friend of ours, Tony Cascarino, mentioned at the weekend in his article that if Salah is to be replaced at Liverpool, Brian Mbeumo is the man. And
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Left-footed, comes from the right, and he's got...
In a better team, he'll score more goals. I think he's a really good player. I don't like him at all. But he's got something about him as well, hasn't he? He's got this kind... He looks as though he believes he's a good player without being... big-headed.
No, he's certainly not an arrogant player.
No, not at all.
He's got the ability to express himself in a different kind of team. You would think that the way Brentford are very strong on set pieces, of course, and he plays his part in that. But in a team that maybe is more of a passing team, that he would get even better. But I don't want to. I think Brentford is an amazing experience. I think all those years when they were out of the top flight, since I think 1947 until their recent ascendancy to the Premier League, it's amazing, and it's a wonderful club to visit. A very hospitable club, a very engaging manager, and I wish them well, and Brian well.
That was a letter from the Gantry, and of course you can read it, all Martin's letters from the Gantry, on our Substack site, substack.com. Where Martin's letters from the Gantry are written in written form, and I write a load of personal views.
Yeah.
Personal views.
Letter from the kitchen here.
Right, we move on to 3 of the best.
3 of the best. He's made them pay, and that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Young player, old player, player. Young player.
Well, we've actually several times talked about the lack of centre forwards in the game, and Liam Delap, now of Ipswich, is showing that there is one on the horizon who may well have a big impact, not just on Ipswich but on the season generally. He's a barnstormer, really, and he came from Manchester City, which suggests that, I don't know, they got close to engaging him. He was in and around the first team squad. But in the end, they decided, as they have done with a lot of players now, we do find going around the country looking at other clubs, ex-Manchester City, but not first team player,
Yeah, whether that's financial and this stupid Premier League rule where you keep all the money or you book it as total profit, or whether it's simply because their first team is so good.
He's not going to replace Erling Haaland, is he? No. But he's hit the ground running in the Premier League, and he scored 2 very different goals against Aston Villa. And I loved the second one. He scored another one, his first Premier League goal, in similar fashion by just getting the ball up and saying, listen, I'm the best kid in the playground here. I'm going to go forward as far as I can. And then when I can't go any further, I'm going to smash it towards the goal. And that's brilliant. That's the kind of football that I think will, whatever you talk about tactical systems, whatever you talk about, how the game should be played, that is the thing that gets people off their seat. And of course, he comes from football stock,
which I'm going to come on.
Yes, I don't want to take your thunder for that, but he, I guess, the mixture of in the garden with Dad and in the training ground with Pep has got him to where he is today. But it's early, and
he's played for England under 21s. He's only 21, just turned 21. He's played for England under 21s. Do you think he's got a big future?
Yeah, I do, and whether it's with England, of course, he qualifies for the Republic of Ireland as well. And my Grealish and Rice in reverse. But if he gets a chance with England, he is a kind of player. I mean, that's the sort of thing Harry Kane has done plenty of times, get the ball and say, right, well, I'm going to get as far as I can and use my shooting power. So it is very early days, but I really like what I see. And with the difficulty of the promoted clubs, Southampton and Leicester, Ipswich at the moment, who probably at the start of the season were the ones below them on relegation, that are more likely to get relegated. Liam looks like it. That's what you have to do when you get promoted. You have to get goals. And that's the hardest thing, to step up. I mean, Southampton have got 3 goals so far this season. Leicester actually have 8, which is more than Ipswich have only 5. But they have Jamie Vardy still.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think Liam's got 3 of those, hasn't he? So it is very early days. And you know, you're looking in the context of who they played against as well. But I hope... it's exciting, and it's exciting with an end product.
Who's Manchester City's backup to Haaland now that he's got?
A false 9, probably.
Yeah.
Because Alvarez would have been.
Yeah. I'm not sure who they've got. I have to look up to see who they played in the League Cup. Okay, that's your young player. My young player is Brighton and Hove Albion's Carlos Baleba. Chelsea beat Brighton 4-2 this weekend. Baleba I'd seen previously several times, and he'd never really done it for me. He's 20. He's only 20. He's a Cameroonian international. He was flipping brilliant in this game. He's strong. They played 4-2-3-1. He played in the 2. And he was strong. He was skillful going forward. He dribbled past people. He broke and powered forward. He's got a hell of a shot, and he closed down. If you saw the highlights of the game, the first, Chelsea managed to give away the goals pathetically, but so did Brighton actually. He closed down Levi Colwill in the penalty area to block a clearance for the first goal to be scored by Rutter. His first goal for Brighton, having come through a record signing from Leeds.
Rutter.
R-U-T-T-E-R, German?
French.
Yeah. Oh, is he French? Yeah. Rutter. Oh, I didn't know if he was French. Rutter. And the second goal he scored himself after Robert Sanchez had given him the ball, Chelsea goalkeeper, given him the ball. But a minute after that, he powered through. That made it 3-2. He powered through and he drove a shot for the corner.
You say he was in the 2 in midfield. Was Jack Hinchelwood the other one?
Jack Hinchelwood was the number 10.
Yeah.
He played.
But he was our young player last week.
And then went to
Brighton again.
Then when they were chasing the game, went to right back.
Yeah.
He did his defensive work well. The goals didn't come because of him against them. And it's just another of those Brighton signings where, a year, 18 months on from him getting into the team, you suddenly say, wow, what a player. Mm-hmm. And when you look back at Caicedo and McAllister and all these guys who have developed at Brighton, it's still going on. He looks a heck of a player. Interesting that Hinchelwood played number 10 because Enciso, who looked as though he was going to be a real world-class player when he was 19 and then got a cruciate ligament rupture, he was only on the bench, and he's not really come back to the level he was before the injury.
And hopefully he will. It does take a bit of time, It does take a bit of time.
So but
another pat on the back for the Seagulls.
Yeah. Old player.
Well, this is an interesting one. I had. I'm trying to think. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked a lot about the great comebacks, and it triggered my memory of the 1957 Charlton Athletic 7, Huddersfield Town 6. And we're hoping later in the year in the podcast to go to Charlton, and that will be part of our story. So I've been sort of beavering away in the background with a lot of help from my young producers here as well, I have to say. And we discovered that there is one player still alive. That's hopefully correct. I don't want to be writing obituaries for people who are still with us, but that one player was the Huddersfield centre-half that day, Ken Taylor. So with a bit of help from my cricket colleagues up in the north, where I worked and covered cricket for a while, I discovered a number for Ken. who's now living in Norfolk and has done for a long time, and got to speak to him thanks to his charming wife Avril, who negotiated this and wanted to know what I was all about, and had never heard of the joy of football or Sky Sports, I don't think, but she was lovely, and I got to speak to Ken. Now let me just put it into context. Ken Taylor played over 250 games for Huddersfield. He played cricket for Yorkshire. He opened the batting for England in 3 Test matches, I think. And not only that, he was an artist of great repute. And there is a book, actually, which I'm trying to get hold of, called Drawn to Sport, which is a clever play on what he did. This is at the end of his career. And sadly, his memory of the very sketchy thoughts about his football playing career. But
how old is he now?
He's 90. He was 89 in August, so he's in his 90th year. So, but to even be in contact with somebody who was in that game was a special feeling for me. And his
just to reiterate, the game was
Charlton 7, Huddersfield 6, and Huddersfield were 5-1 up. And we talk about Cole Palmer.
11 men, and they've gone down to 10 men.
Charlton were down to 10 men after 15 minutes
injury.
with an injury, no subs. And we talk about 4 goals and a half. Johnny Summers scored 5 goals for Charlton in the second half.
No wonder he chooses not to remember it.
Yeah, well, that was what I thought. But it was to just reactivate memory. And what is really, I have to say how absolutely charming his wife was on the phone. She talked a bit about Bill Shankly, who was the manager at the time. She knew that much about Ken's football career at that stage. I don't think they were married then, back in 1957, but they've always been together a long time. And she said, "Well, look, I'm sorry he didn't have any great memories, but thank you for remembering him, because that meant a huge." Because I phoned up, and then obviously I got. The explanation why I was phoning was passed on to Ken, and then he came to the phone an hour later, and she said he's really, really pleased that you remember him. So I'd like to remember him a bit more in a wider context, and hopefully we'll do something on the game. There are all sorts of things. The football in that game, I think, is, or certainly it'll probably be the one ball in those days, is on display at Charlton, and I'm going to do a bit more digging about it. And maybe when we've been to Fulham, we're hoping to go to Brighton soon, and if we go to Charlton, we will go outside London, I promise you, at some point. But it's really captured my imagination, and it was just a joy to talk to somebody who played in that amazing game of football. Whatever we talk about amazing games of football, he was triggered by Bournemouth getting 3 goals in Everton, yeah,
in the last 5 minutes.
But this is way, way, way beyond imagination, really. So I don't want the memories of the game to just be completely forgotten. We're all on the hunt for something else we might be able to tell you about in the future. So Ken Taylor, old player, very old player, but a very good player, and a multi-talented person, not just sport.
Wonderful. My old player is Rory Delap, father of Liam Delap. When I started going to football in the late 1950s, early 1960s, it wasn't unusual to support your team. My team was Chelsea, and then go to another team, Fulham, because that was the other team local, the other week. And Fulham left back Jimmy Langley was the first person I saw with a long throw. Chelsea's first one with a long throw was John Hollins. But then, towards the end of the 1960s, the long throws changed. And Ian Hutchinson became probably, for decades, the most famous long thrower.
The longest thrower.
Ever. Yeah. Because his throw with windmill arms, they actually whirled around after he'd thrown it again, led to the winning goal in the 1970 FA Cup final replay, Chelsea-Leeds, the epic Chelsea-Leeds games. But they led to many goals, and Ian Hutchinson revolutionised long throws. And from then on, I never saw another throw that I didn't think, Hutch was much better, until Rory Delap. And Stoke signed Rory Delap in 2004. They got promoted back to the Premier League or to the top flight after a long time out. I think it was almost 30 years. or 2006 he signed for Stoke, I think.
It was the Premier League.
They got promoted back or up to the top flight in 2008. And he played for them in the 2011 Cup final. He was there till 2013. I think there are only two major finals, with the League Cup final of 1972, where they beat Chelsea, and the 2011 FA Cup final, which was Manchester City's first trophy under the new regime, the new ownership, which I happened to be at. So I've been at both Stoke's Cup finals, I think. And his throw won them so many goals. It was a phenomenal throw. I don't remember him as, I'm not being horrible, I don't remember him as a footballer beyond his throw. He was, I seem to remember that he was quite a strong player, but I don't remember a lot about him. But it's interesting that he's got two sons. We've talked about Liam, who of course is a centre forward. His other son is a defender, Finn, who's 19 years old
and was on loan at Woking.
He was on loan at Woking last season.
He didn't play very much.
Where do you play in defence?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I was coaching another club then, so I didn't see him any of his game. But he Woking have an obsession, it seems, with sons of Jaskelainen, Will Jaskelainen, Jussi's sons in goal. Max Deitch is the centre back, Sean's son, and Lewis Walker plays up front, Des Walker's son. So at that point, I think they were all there last season at that time. I think actually what happened was that Max Deitch was recalled, and Finn Delap came for just a few weeks to cover for him. So, it's amazing.
He's now on loan. He's not. His club is Burton Albion, but he's on loan this season at Buxton in the Conference North. Buxton being a town not far from Burton, actually, I think.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? Really? So yes, with sons of, it's all part of the commentators' research that, and it's nice. And as I think I mentioned before, that last year I had two grandsons of players that I commentated on, Jack Hinchelwood being one, and Archie Gray, who's now at Spurs and played for Leeds last season.
But Liam Delap was a good player. He was a proper Premier League player with
Rory Delap.
Sorry, Rory Delap.
Yeah.
I'm getting all my Delaps mixed up. Rory Delap.
You're getting dilapidated.
Yeah, I had Rory Delap was a good Premier League player with a unique talent, an absolute unique talent.
Just to put a little bit of stoppage time on that, Neil, I had lunch, and very enjoyable lunch was recently with Steve Coppell. And Steve Coppell had never thrown a long throw in his career, as I understand it, until the training session before England's World Cup debut in 1982, their first game against France in Bilbao. And we were all shocked when the ball went out of play inside the first few seconds with England on the attack, and Steve Coppell picked up the ball and hurled it in. Terry Butcher flicked it on, and Brian Robson scored after 27 seconds. And Steve told me over the lunch that they had, once he'd been designated the thrower, they had practiced it. And so it worked the first time, and he thought, well, this is going to work forever. And I don't think England scored again from a long throw till the Euros, when Kyle Walker hurled it in and Jude Bellingham finished it off. So the long throw has a part to play, and Brentford use it, and quite a few clubs do use it, but it's got to be long, I think. There's some very half-lengthers.
Kyle Walker, Manchester City let Kyle Walker do it if they're training games late on or need a goal late on. That's the only time they use it, but they do, okay, player. Your player this week. I've got an assignment coming up involving Atletico Madrid, so I've been doing a bit of research on them and watching their games. And the extraordinary Madrid derby, which had a dark side to it, with 20 minutes the players were taken off the field because of objects thrown after Real Madrid had taken the lead. And Thibaut Courtois complained that he'd been hit by a lighter, I think, and other objects. So I think quite properly the game was suspended. And these are not issues we talk about very much. And
you'd be surprised that I'm going on to talk about a player from a game like this.
Also, can I just point out, there was a game that was actually finished in Belgium this week before the end because the losing team, which is bottom of the league, that their supporters threw objects on the pitch, and the actual president or whatever of that team forfeited the game. They were 3-0 down or 5-0 down or something, 4-0 down, forfeited the game because he was so appalled by the conduct of the supporters.
It hopefully is the exception that proves the rule, that we are living in better times. But these two things did happen within a few hours of each other, really. But when they got going again, and I didn't watch all of the game up till the stoppage, but I am told, and I watched all of it after the stoppage, I'm told it was by far the best bit of the contest. And
the stoppage was the best bit.
The players, I think, were glad to get a second win.
It's a bit like that at Atletico Madrid sometimes.
But the 20 minutes that was left to play was really eventful. And in injury time, stoppage time, Atletico equalised, and Angel Correa, who's my player, got the goal. It was he was sent on as a substitute, and that's his role really. These days he's he's late 20s maybe, but he's maybe a little bit older. But age doesn't matter really. He certainly knows. He looks a bit like Aguero. He moves a bit like Aguero. And he made this run in behind, and the ball was played. And just looking on the television screen, it looked a brilliant run, goal. He bundled the ball into the net. Wasn't a sweet finish, but it bounced. Courtois got involved, and it eventually hit Correa and went in. Cue mass celebration until the flag was raised, and then there was a not a very long delay before they proved that it was onside. So he was the hero. I think it's the fourth time already this season that Atletico has scored a goal. I'd watched them on the previous Thursday, 3 days earlier, and they won a game. Julian Alvarez scored away to Celta Vigo. They won 1-0 with it again, a very, very late goal. So that's a Simeone team. But
I talked about Hernandez last week, scoring the last-minute winner in the Champions League.
Yes, they are. I mean, that's the value of the game these days, and why football is not something you leave before the end. If you're a real football person, you stay till the final whistle and heck with the traffic that might be part of your next couple of hours. So I thought the persistence, the skill, the timing, it was just a wonderful run. And he was in the World Cup. He's a World Cup winner. I think he was a late replacement into the squad in 2022, and he only made one appearance. But he was there, and so he's got some. He was in a Copa America winning team back in 2021 as well. So good player, obviously a good team man because he settles for life from the bench. He doesn't start that often, and it was a really big moment in a very big match. But there was still time for Atletico to have a player sent off, Llorente, for quite a savage tackle. That was a yellow card, and then VAR then worked against Atletico.
Ex-Real Madrid player, of course.
Yes, ex-Real Madrid player. But it's a phenomenal atmosphere, the good bits anyway, and he's my man. He's my man this week.
And just a note, Rodrigo, Mbappe, Vinicius, but Real Madrid's goal was scored by the central defender Militao.
Yes,
Rudiger having scored in the Champions League against Strasbourg to put them 2-1 up. They still need their other players. Okay, my player of the week is, as everybody I'm sure anticipates, Cole Palmer after his 4 goals in the first half against Brighton. He's 22. I said last season that there were world-class moments from him, but you don't become a world-class player after one season. I also said one season doesn't make you even a good player if you can't follow it up. And the thing about Premier League defenders, they're so football intelligent, it makes it very difficult for you to repeat it in the second season. And he has had issues in the second season. He's had some quieter games. But even last season, when he was doing so brilliantly. He had a number of quiet games and then made the difference. And even in this game, he struggled once or twice before he suddenly got these 4 goals. I think he's an absolute genius. I think he is becoming seriously world class. But the amazing thing I want to bring up about him, and why I want to talk about him this week, is that in the last 10 years, really since Chelsea won the Champions League the first time and that original Mourinho team broke up, Chelsea have really only had a couple of world-class players, Eden Hazard and N'Golo Kante. Thiago Silva at the end of his career was when he came was still world-class probably, but those two, and they seem to me to both come from a clear line, style of player. Hazard coming from that dribbling, exciting winger, Charlie Cook, Pat Nevin, Arjen Robben at Chelsea, and Kante coming from the ball-winning, holding midfielder. Holding, it doesn't mean that you stick in front of your back 4. It means that you go hunting the ball, maybe. They're different in style, but Claude Makelele, John Obi Mikel, N'Golo Kante. Cole Palmer doesn't come from any list of player. He is unique. He is different, and I can't think of a player who plays in that laconic style that he does with those unbelievable skills. And he never seems to burst. He never seems to change his intensity. He just delivers. And I can go back to the 60s for people old enough and say, yeah, there's a little bit of Osgood, a little bit of Houseman, who had that left-sided style. And into the 80s, or more than the 90s, really, with Wise and Zola, not Wise so much, but Zola and Di Matteo and Poyet and even Petrescu. And then definitely there's even a little bit of Malouda with that laconic style. But there's nobody that's like him. That is unique, except that in the Premier League, all of a sudden, he's really the third one after Saka and Foden. Saka's more of a wide player. But there's this sudden style of player with this unique style, except it's not unique. There's 3 of them.
Well, they're all left-footers who can play on the right and can play elsewhere. But I would say of those 3, Cole Palmer's probably the one who consists. I mean, Phil Foden's goals ratio something like 80 goals for Man City. So, and that's one of the reasons why Cole Palmer's at Chelsea, to be honest. That they all 3 of them score goals. Palmer just seems to have a greater variety in the finishes that he comes up with, but he is Foden-esque. I think in the last goal that he got, I could see Phil Foden getting that one, But the free kick was at a time where direct free kick goals are collector's items, really. Did you actually say, don't shoot?
The thing is, he's never scored direct from a free kick for Chelsea, and he's taken some pretty second-rate ones. And it was 30 yards. It wasn't like it was 24, 25 yards. It was 30 yards. So I wasn't saying it, but I was thinking, you've got to be on top of your game at this moment to do it. And he just was. I mean, he just. It was sensational. It was absolutely sensational.
The best thing about Cole Palmer, for me, well, apart from his ability, but is his personality. He'll have a bad time and he'll be just the same. He just takes it in his stride, takes the game in his stride. The interviews are hilarious because he's so honest about the Dennis Bergkamp comparison. With clearly Dennis Bergkamp's name, which means a lot to a lot of older people, didn't mean too much to Cole.
Well, a lot of middle-aged people.
Yeah, and I felt a little bit with it when Lallana came on. Has had an outstanding career, being an England player of the season or the year, as England do it. And nobody really responded to it because a lot of young people in the ground.
I don't see that comparison Theo Walcott made with Bergkamp at all. I think they're completely different. I mean, I know Bergkamp was a creative number 10 with Henry, but I don't see it in style of play at all. He was a more powerful, more forward player.
He certainly had a greater physical presence. It was. I had Tyler Dibbling, who we mentioned. I saw him play again. Play for Southampton at Bournemouth, and I was working with Scott Minto, and we came up with a comparison. Chris Waddle. But as I said it, I thought, well, that's going back. Chris would be in his 60s now, wouldn't he? That's going back a long time. But there is that kind of... so we have to be careful. Yeah. You're quite right. It's a very good one with Saka and Foden, because they are very much in the consciousness of... And Cole Palmer would have heard of them.
Yeah, but the extraordinary thing is there hasn't really been anyone of that ilk in generations before. It's just suddenly arrived.
Well, it's a consequence, I think, of the game, the way young players are brought up, technically very good, dietary very good. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong in a young player's body. He hasn't had, touch wood, he won't get an injury that will set him back. And they are all of them are durable, aren't they? I mean, Saka plays. Arsenal fans that I know, and why is he playing Saka in this game? Well, Saka always plays, so get used to it, live with it, And that's the biggest compliment in an era where playing 38 games, or playing every minute of every game, which is what you set out to do as a player. He never wanted to be taken off, and there was only one opportunity for years and years, and obviously going way back, and we have been today, you couldn't be substituted, so you did play all the time. But the 90-minute footballer is a thing of the past, really. But those guys are close to it, and you have to be well in front to risk taking them off, I would say.
Okay, we've got loads to go through still, so we're going to hurry up because we're indulging today. So that's three of the best. Next up, our new segment that we started last week, comparisons. Ta-da. All right, comparisons, where we take two players and we talk about the footballers, never the managers, the coaches or anything. These players are as the footballers. So 3 comparisons today. Martin, first of all, Jude Bellingham, number 5 for Real Madrid, and Zinedine Zidane, number 5 for Real Madrid.
Yeah, when you mooted this, it's a difficult thing to do. Zidane, a sort of slightly different physique, sort of more square-shouldered, wonderfully gifted. I was there for the goal at Hampden Park.
In the Champions League final.
Champions League final, yeah.
2002, Real Madrid, Bayer Leverkusen.
And it was just a moment, a jaw-dropping moment. And Jude is doing these things in his own way. And I don't know where Jude Bellingham's going to end up playing. I think that's the fascinating thing about it. It probably won't be a decision. It'll just be how the club goes and what's needed at the time. I mean, there was something about Zidane that we can only say now with history, that he had this aura about him. And I think you only get that by playing for a long period at the top level with top talent. And he certainly had that.
He didn't have real pace, but he was a strong, striding runner with a strong body.
And
he had the best. I do believe he had the best touch I've ever seen, ever. I thought his weight of pass, his first touch, which was often a trick to get away from people. I think he had the best touch and perhaps the best vision with his passing I've ever seen.
And the World Cup final, I mean, you've got to put your markers down in history, haven't you? The 98 World Cup final, which he... 2
headers from corners.
Yeah, well, that tells you. And Jude Bellingham could do that as well, there is a fair comparison. But I think, to be totally honest, Zidane obviously had his time and did it, and did brilliantly and became quite rightly a world icon in football. Jude Bellingham has the chance to do that, but until he does, then you can't say that. He's got the potential to end up with a career like Zidane.
What I would say is that Zidane, to me, was the player for whom 4-2-3-1 was invented, because France in '98 had Didier Deschamps and Emmanuel Petit behind him, and he played the number 10 behind the centre forward, and it was kind of a new shape. And when he went to Real Madrid, which I think was about 2001, quite a bit later, I might be wrong on that, but I think it was around then, they were so blind, and they played a 4-4-2, and that didn't suit him at all. And he finished up for a long period playing on the left wing, because they didn't want him in central midfield, because that loping style, he wasn't someone who was going to track back and what have you. He won games, so they put him on the wing, or they just put him as a wide midfielder, and it limited his game. And I think that if Jude Bellingham is going to fulfill everything that he can do, he needs to play in the position that suits him best. And Real Madrid need to build a team, a shape of a team that allows him to do that. And last season, with that midfield diamond and him at the point of the diamond, he where he hadn't played before, but it just suited him so much.
But it was only 2/3 of a season that he did it.
It was, but it was still extraordinary.
It's extraordinary, and he will track back. So you can put him. So,
but
there's one comparison. You've made the point about Zidane not being particularly willing to do that.
Yeah.
I don't have great memories of that, but I know Jude will do anything that he's asked of him, really, and. What's best for Bellingham, it doesn't matter really. It's what's best for Real Madrid or whichever club that he plays for. And what's best in this kitchen for cat food is also something that's very much on the agenda.
Tomorrow wants some attention.
Yeah.
Whereas Tammy has sat behind Martin on a sofa and has been asleep since everybody's arrived.
I've sent many people to sleep, so why not a cat as well? So.
Okay, that's Bellingham and Zidane. Next one, Ederson and Bruce Grobbelaar.
I got to know Bruce really well. Always a very convivial person. Never, you could take him out of Southern Africa, but you couldn't take the Southern African out of him, you know.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, he was a maverick, a nutcase, a goalkeeper who fulfills that old cliche of all goalkeepers are crazy.
Listen, whatever show we're doing, someone else is stealing it at the moment.
Well, just good marking, isn't it, from Tomori?
I think wearing black, he probably is refereeing what we're saying. So,
but what I would say about Grobbelaar, which I think is really important, and he, of course, was the goalkeeper for Liverpool all through the 1980s, succeeding the great Ray Clemence. What I would say about Grobbelaar was, I think he was one of the most underrated goalkeepers. I think there were two reasons he was, or maybe three reasons he was underrated. One, because people like Ray Clemence. Two, because in Liverpool, the city, Neville Southall was the goalkeeper at Everton, and a lot of people claimed he was the best goalkeeper in the world. And three, because he kept goal in a way that was different to everybody else, which is why I'm comparing Ederson to him. And Bruce Grobbelaar was much smaller than most goalkeepers, very agile, great hands, and everyone knew how he played. And if the ball was there to be won, he came for it. And when he came for it, he went to the edge of his area to claim high balls in the days when there were far more crosses. And Hansen and Lawrenson, or whoever the defenders were, knew he was going to do that. And the mistakes that he did make, he mostly made around 18 yards from goal. And they were back on the goal line to defend it because they knew what he was like.
And he was probably one of the first we used the sweeper keeper term about.
But he was a sensational goalkeeper.
But he was a crowd pleaser. He'd be worth zillions today because of his personality as well as his ability.
He won Champions European Cups, he won leagues, he was a serial winner. And he was, for me, in that era, he was the best goalkeeper in the top flight of English football. But it was always, people always spoke of Southall or whoever, but he was the best for me. And Ederson, you told me I hadn't seen it. I've seen it now that he did a back heel.
I was sitting at home. I was waiting to go out to a match, actually. I was sitting at home and I sort of jumped up to have a look at the screen to see if it had really happened, and it did. Yeah, and he's he's top of the tree in confidence outside his box, and everybody knows he could have been I don't think he'd been an outfield player at the level that he's playing in goal at, but he would have earned a living as an outfield player. But it is that's the way the game is going. Still, debates go on about whether the goalkeeper should. Or whether the goalkeeper should be told to do this.
Well, it's very interesting that you did the commentary at Bournemouth with Scott Mintos, because Scott was at my game on Saturday, Chelsea-Brighton. And he said there, when so many of the 6 goals came from goalkeepers playing out from the back, I think 4 of the 6 goals came from it. And he said, the trouble with asking your goalkeeper to play like your best creative midfielder or a number 10 is that they don't have the technical qualities.
Yeah, you're right.
They're far better than they were, but they're still probably the least good on the pitch, apart from Edison.
Well, yeah, maybe, but they are being asked. It's a very good point. They are being asked to play as the most skillful player on the pitch would play, not as maybe their centre-backs are going to play, or some of the centre-backs now, of course, are very good, and that's also part of the reason they get picked. But it is. I thought I watched Aaron Ramsdale in the game. He's obviously lost his place at Arsenal because David Raya. One of the things that Arteta preferred Raya is his ability with the ball at his feet. But Ramsdale did very well for Russell Martin, who demands this kind of stuff, and perhaps had to learn it really in the glare of a spotlight of a team that's near the bottom of the table. But he played some good halfway passes into a player showing well inside the Southampton half, but he drilled them in, and then the hold-up player was actually a player called Ross Stewart, who's hardly played, but came on for the second half. He's hardly played because he's been injured, not because he's just a reserve player. And that got them into the game in the second half. So... But it is the risk and reward is amazing. Well, just tell me about the reward. We all know the risk, but the reward, you go, well, I played through the press, but how many times, if you risk, you're likely to concede, let's say 80% of the time. The reward, you might get this perfect playing through the press goal, or you might get up the field. But you're certainly likely to get a goal probably 1% or 5% of the time.
The interesting thing for me is, and Edison doesn't fulfill this category, is that since this has started, goalkeepers throw the ball far less. Not far more, far less, because they're all doing these short passes.
Yeah, that's true.
And a couple of times recently, I've seen a goalkeeper looking to make a throw, and it's just not on. And I find that remarkable, because you should be able to pick the ball up and hurl it quickly, 30, 40 yards. And I mean, I'm used to seeing goalkeeper throws in the old days to the halfway line and throw it 30, 40 yards to someone in space, but it's fallen out of the game. You don't see Edison throw it. Bruce Grobbelaar had a great throw as a goalkeeper. And
I went on a trip with Liverpool to the Sudan when Bruce was their goalkeeper. It was a fundraising trip for Liverpool. They got paid to go. It wasn't at the end of the season. It wasn't one of these millionaire tours to the USA. It was a weekend in December. They played on the Saturday, flew to Sudan on the Sunday, played on the Monday, came back because it was Christmas, had 4 or 5 days before the next game. And Bruce took us down into the market and gave us a wonderful exhibition of bartering in the African way. He was a terrific guy to be around, and I'm glad you've raised his name, because he I know there have been 1 or 2 little scars on his career, but the truth is that he was...
which were never proved.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And didn't look great, but were never proved. I've got a great Grobbelaar family story, and I'm not going to tell it to you, but I'll tell you after we turn the cameras and the microphones off. Hey!
Down in the market in the Sudan, in Khartoum we were, isn't it? It sounds so great. Yeah. With Grobbelaar in Khartoum, I did experience that.
Right, our final double act, we're going back to something we've touched on, Raul Jimenez and Chicharito, Javier Hernandez. 50 goals from Raul Jimenez, the second top scoring Mexican in the Premier League. 53 from the top scoring one, Chicharito. But actually 2 very different forwards.
Yeah, very different. I mean, it's Raul. Both of them have amazing international careers. I mean, Mexico have been very lucky to have them almost sort of bookending.
Extraordinary as well, because Mexico have to be, for me, the most unachieving nation, even outdoing England in the history of international football.
I know, they've had some great players, and they're also a great team. When you're commentating on them, to go and see them, they're always very welcoming. Of course, they live in a country where English is backing onto the United States. Obviously, they speak the American English, but they're always very accessible. And Javier Hernandez was a poacher and a very good finisher in the box. Take your eye off him in the box. And
he had a very good World Cup in 2010, I thought, and then went to Manchester United on the back of that. And his 2010-11 season, he got into the team. They started playing 4-2-3-1 with Rooney behind him as the number 10, Giggs and Carrick in midfield, and they won the league and got to the Champions League final, lost to Barcelona. But after that, he picked up injuries, another like Raul Jimenez, and was never quite the same again. And he's gone to MLS, and he's kind of underperformed, really.
And that's, to go back to Raul Jimenez, that he was never going to be the same again. But now there are signs that he is, and that's incredible.
Just two things about Jimenez. When he was really hitting his peak at Wolves, which was for a season before he got before the fractured skull.
More than that, because he had 34 Premier League goals.
Yeah, but he suddenly became prolific, didn't he? He started off quietly and became prolific, but when he was really in that prolific spell, and it did last a good year or more, I thought he looked a Real Madrid player. I thought he looked that good. I was thinking, because even then Benzema was getting on in years, and I was thinking he could get a Real Madrid job for a couple of years. I thought he was good.
Really happy, and I presume that carried on to the transfer. He was really happy in Wolverhampton. He imagine being Jimenez in Mexico. You couldn't get out your house without being recognised and stuff. And in Wolverhampton, although people would recognise him because of the exploits, but he never got bothered, and he really loved the peace in his life. And then, of course, it seemed his life was on the line.
But so you told me, I remember you telling me that when COVID hit, he had the chance to go home to Mexico. And he said, no, I want to stay in Wolverhampton.
Yeah, no, that's right. He was really happy. And I think I'm right in saying that he went back into the training ground 3 weeks after this fractured skull and wanted to start. Of course, they didn't let him in. He eventually started away from the main group individually, and he had 6 months or so doing that. And it was a long time still after that he was allowed to play, but with the headband on, and he just recognised the fact that he couldn't be. Surely he's not going to head a goal in the Premier League with what he's been through, but of course he eventually came through that. And that, I think, is the amazing thing about Raul, that here we are now saying, oh, why did Fulham sign him? You know, he's not really got much left, obviously, because of circumstance. And yet now the goal against Newcastle, I mean, from Newcastle's point of view, it's probably a terrible goal concede, but the way pulled the ball down away from the goal, turned and smashed it in the net was just outstanding. One of the best goals I've seen this season. And he takes a mean penalty, and that's obviously helped him get to 50. It's extraordinary, and he's going to beat Javier. And I can't call him Chicharito. I never wanted to do that. You can't come here with a nickname and have it on your shirt, but he did. Manchester United had been like that. They wanted to call Depay Memphis. Well, Memphis wanted to be called Memphis, so they supported that. But I rang the Dutch journalist. I said, "What do you call him?" And they went Depay. So we stuck with that. It was always in my commentary. It was always Javier Hernandez, and he scored plenty of goals. Did he win a game at Chelsea for?
Oh, shut up!
I think he did.
Champions League.
Yeah. Well,
the Champions League quarter final.
Wasn't it the 3-2 game? Did he not score? When Chelsea were down to 9 men or something like that.
I think.
And was he offside? You've got a lot to beef about, Neil.
Right, okay, we move on. Voice of Passion.
Voice of Passion.
with, of course, Martin giving the voice of reason.
First time I've ever been identified since we've been doing this. Steve Coppell kindly came up to me and said, we hadn't seen each other for a while. We spent a lot of time. He said, company when he was a Premier League manager. And he said, I've seen you. He said, the voice of reason, he said. So coming from somebody who played 42 times for England, I was quite touched. So we are reaching parts that would perhaps have surprised us.
I've got a wild one this week. Safe standing has come back, and I've done it. And I was never a stander. My dad always wanted to sit, and I became a sitter. But safe standing has come back. I've stood. It's fun. I haven't got a problem with it at all. I want safe desegregation. It's considered to be absolutely impossible because of the way society and football society has become. But when you and I grew up, not only was football not on television, there was no match of the day. So the only way...
There was Soccer Special. That was before Match of the Day. Everybody's forgotten about it. I don't think the BBC have got it in their archives, but there were games shown, I would say from the late 1950s, but where they've disappeared to, I'd love to do some...
Was that a midweek thing?
No, that was whatever BBC called it. There was football on of an evening before Match of the Day became a brand. And there was, there were not for long, but there was.
Yeah. I mean, the only way that you found out about the team you were playing was on the back pages of the newspapers, which were much more important in those days, newspapers, or from being with opposition supporters. And I loved that banter. As a kid, I loved that banter of being with opposition supporters and hearing what they said about their team and everything as Jimmy Greaves scored another goal for Chelsea against them. I loved all that. And segregation came because of the troubles that came starting in the mid-1960s, really. They started, or the second half of the 1960s. I always go back to the Merseyside derby on this. And in the Merseyside derby, there was never any crowd trouble until they introduced segregation. And families would go together with one member in a red shirt and one member in a blue shirt, and they'd stand or sit together, and there was never any trouble at the Merseyside derbies. But once they separated them, and there was the red end and the blue end, that's when trouble started, because it became more anonymous and you could afford for that to happen as a perpetrator. I want a desegregated area, like a safe desegregated area, like a safe standing area. I want to be with opposing supporters. I want the banter. I want the information. You get outside the ground. I went to an Arsenal-Chelsea game a few years ago with my son, and we went into a lovely little family Italian restaurant opposite Highbury and Islington Station beforehand, and we shared a table with two Arsenal supporters, and it was the season that Aaron Ramsey ran out of contract and was going to Juventus, and we were saying, how can you let him run out of contract? He's such a good player. And they went, no, he hasn't passed to an Arsenal player for the last 18 months. He never passes to Arsenal. No, he's your best player. You can't. And so on. And that's how the conversation went. And then we went to the game, and he passed to a Chelsea player every time he got the ball. And we were, well, blimey, he's useless. What's happened to Aaron Ramsey? And he went to Juventus, and he remained useless. But that's... You find out so much more, and it doesn't have to be... there's too much hate in football, and hating the opposition doesn't prove your love anymore for your team. It just proves you're damaged. You're a damaged person. I don't hate these other teams. I haven't got a problem with opposing supporters. Oh, there's someone with a away shirt sitting in our home area. Get them out. No. Relax. For God's sake, what's wrong with you? I don't have to hate anybody to love my team. And if you do, you're damaged.
Well, the voice of reason, much as I admire your sentiments, it isn't going to happen. It's too risky. And one bad day would spoil it for everybody, and no one's going to put their head above the parapet to sanction it because they will be held responsible for it. And I think it is much more feasible now in the world that we live in. But the truth is, when you talk about too much hate in the football ground, some would say there's too much hate in life.
I would, definitely.
Yeah. Well, that means, bless you. The passion is there, and it's a good cause. But it ain't going to happen while I'm on the planet, that's for sure. Hopefully, in times to come, things will change, and all the points you make are very valid ones. So it's the same my experience for me, but it's too tribal, and there's too much misapplied pride to it, really. You're insulting my player and this, that and the other. You can't... Nice try, Neil.
Right, you're not going to be my independent, what's it called? Regulator, after all. I was going to have you, you're not.
No, it's interesting. Of course, I'm not a politician, so no one who's not a politician is not going to be the independent regulator, but it would be a challenge. Okay,
that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Stoppage time, very quickly. I just want to bring a couple of things to your attention. Martin brought up the Madrid derby early on. Barcelona lost their first game of the season. In fact, they dropped their first points of the season this last weekend. So after 8 games, Barcelona 21 points, Real Madrid 18, Villarreal 17, Atletico Madrid 16.
A very calm Carlo Ancelotti said after that last-minute equaliser against his Real Madrid team, well, at least we gained a point on Barcelona.
Who lost, having rested
Lamine
Yamal for missing his first game of the season because Hansi Flick said he can't play every single game.
Tell that to Bukayo Saka.
Yeah, so... without him, obviously, it had a huge effect. Just one other thing about the La Liga. Valencia, 18th in the relegation zone. Struggling clubs. Huge club, struggling.
It can happen to other teams as well as Manchester United.
Yep. Full circle. What a wonderful team. And I just want to bring up Serie A. Also 6 games into the season, and look who's top, 1 point clear. By the way, Serie A, unlike all the other major leagues, the top team after 6 games has just 13 points. Many more points being dropped, but it's Napoli. Antonio Conte's top, 1 point ahead of Juventus and 2 ahead of AC Milan, Torino and Inter Milan down in 5th place champions. But Antonio Conte, I can't believe he'll do it again. But if he does do it again, what does that say to Tottenham Hotspur, who brought him in to win something, and it all just went kaput? But he won the league 3 times at Juventus. He won it once at Chelsea. He won it once at Inter Milan. Tottenham is the only club he's not won the league with so far, and now he's gone to Napoli. It's looking pretty.
I think it's fair to say the blame is shared between Antonio himself and the club. I don't think you can label the club being responsible for it totally, but all I would say is those Napoli players will be doing a lot of work on the training ground, because that's how it happens for him, and absolute diligence at it, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And look at his career.
That's it from Martin and me.
See you next time.
That's it. Yes, thanks everybody for listening to the end. What a long podcast as well. So you've done really well. And if you were watching and you saw Tamori coming right up to the camera, you wouldn't have seen Tammy asleep behind Martin. They, of course, now are Milan players, along with all those other ex-Chelsea players, Morata and Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Christian Pulisic. I think I'm going to have to go to Italy in order to fulfill all my joys of football. Patreon, Substack.com, and the podcast a week after the last one next week. Keep listening, keep watching.